My beloved child, pause here, listen closely, because the story you think you know is only the surface, and something deeper is about to unfold. Before the headlines, before the billions, there was a silence that almost swallowed everything. Elon Musk didn't begin with certainty. He began with doubt so heavy it bent his nights. Moments where the future felt fragile. Moments where failure wasn't a lesson yet, only a weight. What if the darkest hours are not signs to stop, but signals that something rare is being shaped? Picture this. A man standing at the edge of collapse, not once, but again and again. Every project mocked. Every risk questioned. Every mistake amplified. The world saw ambition. He felt isolation. There were nights when SpaceX was one launch away from extinction. One failure away from disappearing entirely. And the rockets did fail. Over and over. Explosions that echoed louder than the applause ever had. Here's the part most people skip too fast. Failure didn't harden him. It clarified him. When Tesla was bleeding cash, when critics said the dream was impossible, when even allies whispered doubts, he didn't retreat. He refined. Ask yourself this quietly. What if pressure isn't meant to crush you, but to focus you? Elon has said that some of the worst moments were when success felt farther than ever, when every decision felt like a gamble with no safety net. No guarantees. No applause waiting. Just belief versus reality. And in that space, something extraordinary formed. Not confidence. Conviction. This is where the empire truly began. Not in boardrooms. Not in valuation charts. But in the discipline to stand still while everything screamed to run. Most people quit when pain arrives. Visionaries listen. If you're still here, stay with this thought. Because the next realization changes how you see struggle itself. And it may explain why the moments testing you right now are not random at all. Wait, before you move on, there's another layer you haven't seen yet. Hold on a moment, this is where the story turns inward, and the truth becomes sharper. Elon Musk didn't just risk money. He risked identity. At one point, nearly everything he had was invested into ideas no one could guarantee would work. Imagine knowing that one wrong outcome could erase years of effort in seconds. And choosing to proceed anyway. Here's the quiet secret. The darkest moments weren't public failures. They were private doubts. Moments of asking, is this worth it? Moments when the vision felt too heavy to carry alone. But something unexpected happened in those moments. Fear stopped being the enemy. It became a signal. Instead of asking, will this fail? He asked, does this matter? That single shift changes everything. When you chase validation, failure ends you. When you chase purpose, failure trains you. This is why setbacks didn't stop the empire, they structured it. Every breakdown became a blueprint. Every mistake became a system. Think about your own life for a second. What if the delay you hate is actually protecting you from building too small? Elon's empire wasn't built by avoiding loss. It was built by understanding it. And if this perspective is already changing something inside you, pass it forward. Share this story with someone who feels stuck in their own dark chapter. Leave a comment with the word clarity if this message is landing. And stay connected, subscribe, so you don't miss what's coming next. Because we're not finished. The $300 billion empire didn't rise after failure. It rose because of it. But there's still one moment most people never hear about. The moment when quitting felt logical. And continuing felt irrational. Stay a little longer. This is where everything aligns. Before you go, hear this line, because it carries the final key. The true breakthrough didn't arrive when success showed up. It arrived when failure stopped feeling personal. At some point, Elon Musk stopped seeing setbacks as reflections of himself. They became data. Signals. Coordinates. That's when momentum changed. When rockets finally landed. When production stabilized. When the vision stopped being questioned and started being copied. The world called it genius. He knew it was endurance. Here's the revelation most people miss. The empire wasn't built on confidence. It was built on resilience trained in darkness. If you remove those darkest moments, the empire collapses. No pressure, no precision. No doubt, no depth. And that's the paradox. The moments that almost destroyed the dream are the same moments that made it inevitable. So if you're standing in uncertainty right now, don't rush to escape it. Listen to it. Because what feels like an ending may actually be alignment. What feels like loss may be refinement. Elon Musk's darkest moments didn't end his story. They edited it. And maybe, just maybe, this moment in your life isn't asking you to quit. It's asking you to become precise. Wait till the final moment. Because once you see struggle this way, you never experience it the same again. And that changes everything. Wait, before you move, something just shifted. You were meant to hear this section most of all. Remember the question we left hanging. The moment when endurance stopped being survival and quietly became direction? This is where that mystery starts to breathe. Here's a truth few people notice. Elon Musk didn't conquer failure by overpowering it. He let it speak. There was a phase when the losses weren't dramatic anymore. No explosions. No headlines. Just slow, grinding pressure. And that was more dangerous than chaos. Because when pain becomes quiet, most people mistake it for normal. They settle. They adapt downward. But something inside him resisted that comfort. This moment may explain what you've been sensing in your own life. That strange discomfort even when things seem fine. That quiet voice saying, "This isn't finished yet." Here's the micro-reveal. The darkest moments didn't end when the money stabilized. They ended when the vision became non-negotiable. Short sentence. Long realization. Once the destination became clear, setbacks lost their power to confuse. They could delay, but not derail. That's when the future started bending. Factories weren't just buildings anymore. They were timelines being compressed. Rockets weren't machines. They were statements about where humanity could go next. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. The empire didn't grow because risks disappeared. It grew because fear stopped being consulted. And here's the hope hiding inside the tension. You don't need certainty to move forward. You need alignment. When your actions and purpose lock in, the noise fades. Critics soften. Doubts lose their grip. Elon once described moments when continuing felt heavier than stopping. But stopping felt wrong. That's the signal most people miss. If this message resonates, you know where to find the next one. Because we're approaching a revelation that changes the entire frame. The reason the empire reached a $300 billion horizon wasn't scale. It was timing. Failures didn't happen randomly. They arrived exactly when the vision needed sharpening. This is the part no one warns you about. Growth isn't loud at first. It's precise. And right before the world calls it success, there's one last internal test. A pause. A choice. A moment where the old identity must dissolve. Stay with this feeling. You'll understand at the end. Because before the next part, something must be revealed. One truth is still missing. Hold this moment. Because what you're about to hear reframes everything that came before. You remember the question we left unresolved. That final internal test. The moment when the old identity had to dissolve before the future could arrive. This is where it happens. There was a season when Elon Musk realized something unsettling. Failure was no longer the enemy. Comfort was. That realization didn't arrive loudly. It arrived quietly, almost unnoticed. A subtle awareness that repeating what already worked could slowly erase the very reason he began. Here's the first micro-reveal. The darkest moments weren't always losses. Sometimes, they were small wins that tempted him to stop evolving. Short pause. Long truth. When success begins to feel familiar, vision starts to blur. And he sensed it. This moment may explain what you've been sensing too. That strange restlessness even after progress. That inner tension saying, there's still more range left in you. Instead of protecting the present, he leaned toward the unknown again. Not recklessly. Intentionally. Factories scaled faster than logic suggested. Timelines tightened beyond comfort. The future wasn't waited for, it was pulled closer. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. The empire didn't expand by chasing growth. It expanded by refusing stagnation. Here's the deeper revelation. At some point, Elon stopped building companies. He started building trajectories. Each project wasn't a destination. It was a launch angle. When you see it this way, the failures make sense. They weren't detours. They were course corrections. Hope rises here. Because it means the moments you question yourself most may be moments of recalibration, not collapse. Think about this carefully. If your path feels uncomfortable right now, it may be because you've outgrown your last version. Elon's darkest moments evolved as he did. Early on, they were about survival. Later, they were about responsibility. The weight of knowing that what you build influences not just markets, but futures. That kind of pressure doesn't ask for confidence. It asks for clarity. And clarity only comes when distractions burn away. Stay with this thought. You'll understand at the end. Because there's another layer approaching, one almost no one talks about. A final internal shift that turned pressure into propulsion. Before the next part, something must be revealed. One truth is still missing. You were meant to hear this now, because this is the moment where pressure transforms into propulsion. Remember the missing truth we circled at the end. That final internal shift. The one that turns weight into lift. This is it. There came a point when Elon Musk stopped asking how hard something was. He started asking how necessary it was. That single question rewired everything. Here's the first micro-reveal. Difficulty didn't slow him anymore. Irrelevance did. Short sentence. Long meaning. When something mattered deeply enough, exhaustion lost its voice. Time stretched. Limits softened. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. Why the things that truly matter to you feel heavy, but also alive. Why ease feels empty, and challenge feels meaningful. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon's darkest moments evolved into moments of responsibility. Not fear-based responsibility. Vision-based responsibility. He understood that when you aim at the future, hesitation becomes a luxury you can't afford. So decisions accelerated. Iterations tightened. Failure windows shrank. Here's the surprising turn. The more pressure increased, the calmer the direction became. Why? Because uncertainty disappeared. Not uncertainty about outcomes, but uncertainty about why he was moving. When purpose locks in, chaos loses authority. Hope rises here. Because it means clarity isn't found by thinking harder. It's found by committing deeper. Elon didn't remove risk from the equation. He removed distraction. And suddenly, failures stopped feeling personal. They became signals. Adjustments. Data points guiding the next move. Another micro-reveal. The empire didn't reach scale by chasing money. Money followed momentum. Momentum followed alignment. Alignment followed truth. And truth often arrives disguised as discomfort. Stay with this feeling. You'll understand at the end. Because this is where the story shifts from building things to shaping time. The future stopped being a distant idea. It became a schedule. Deadlines weren't pressure anymore. They were invitations to arrive sooner. That's when the $300 billion horizon stopped being a dream and started being a consequence. But here's the quiet mystery still unfolding. What happens when even alignment isn't enough? When purpose is clear. Momentum is strong. And yet, something deeper demands attention? Listen, something subtle is unfolding right now, and it's closer to you than you think. You remember the question we left unanswered. What happens when alignment is strong, momentum is real, and purpose is clear? Yet something deeper still demands attention? This is where that answer begins to surface. There was a phase when Elon Musk realized that speed alone wasn't enough anymore. Not speed of execution, but speed of understanding. Here's the first micro-reveal. The next level wasn't about doing more. It was about seeing sooner. Short sentence. Long echo. At this stage, the darkest moments became internal calibrations. Moments where he questioned not the mission, but the assumptions behind it. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That quiet feeling that something needs to be re-examined. Not because it's broken, but because it's evolving. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon began compressing feedback loops. Ideas moved from thought to reality faster than comfort allowed. Mistakes weren't avoided, they were invited early, when they were cheaper, lighter, instructive. Here's the surprising turn. The faster he learned, the fewer failures felt heavy. Because failure delayed is painful. Failure early is informative. Hope rises here. It means the setbacks you face now may only feel heavy because they're arriving late. Not because they're wrong. Elon's darkest moments at this level weren't dramatic losses. They were realizations that time, not money, was the true constraint. And once you see time clearly, priorities sharpen instantly. Another micro-reveal. Perfection stopped being the goal. Progress did. Clean lines replaced complex ones. Simple truths replaced elaborate plans. That's when the future accelerated again. This isn't just about rockets or cars. It's about a mindset where every day asks a quiet question. What must become obvious today? Stay with this thought. You'll understand at the end. Because when clarity compounds, something unusual happens. Confidence stops needing reinforcement. Doubt stops demanding attention. And yet, here's the mystery still unresolved. What do you do when clarity removes excuses, but raises expectations? When the vision is undeniable, and the responsibility feels larger than the individual carrying it? Elon reached that threshold too. A place where success no longer answers the deeper question. You were guided to this moment, because this is where the weight becomes visible. You remember the tension we left unresolved. When clarity removes excuses, and responsibility grows larger than the individual carrying it. This is where that weight settles. There was a stage when Elon Musk realized something quietly profound. The vision was no longer personal. It was collective. Here's the first micro-reveal. The darkest moments weren't about whether the future could happen. They were about whether he could carry it forward responsibly. Short sentence. Long gravity. When people begin to depend on a vision, the margin for error narrows. Decisions echo further. Time feels denser. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That pressure that doesn't feel like fear, but feels like importance. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon reached a point where personal resilience wasn't enough. Systems had to become resilient too. Ideas needed structure. Teams needed clarity. Here's the surprising shift. The lonelier the responsibility felt, the more intentional collaboration became. Leadership changed shape. Instead of holding everything alone, he focused on creating environments where truth moved faster than ego. Where problems surfaced early. Where reality wasn't softened. And in that honesty, momentum stabilized. Hope rises here. Because it means you don't have to carry everything by yourself forever. You just have to carry it clearly, long enough for others to align. Another micro-reveal. At this level, the darkest moments aren't failures. They're moments when expectations collide. Expectations from the world. From teams. From the future itself. That collision doesn't ask for strength. It asks for coherence. Every decision began answering one question. Does this move the future closer, or blur it? When that question becomes your compass, noise fades. Stay with this awareness. You'll understand at the end. Because something subtle is forming beneath all this progress. A final internal realization that reshapes how success itself is defined. Elon sensed it too. When impact outgrows ambition, a new responsibility emerges. Not to win, but to steward. And that realization changes everything. But here's the mystery still unfolding. What happens when even stewardship isn't enough? When the future demands not just guidance, but transformation? Stay right here, because what's about to surface is the shift most people never notice. You remember the mystery we paused on. When stewardship replaces ambition. When success demands transformation, not just guidance. This is where that transformation begins. There was a point when Elon Musk realized the future didn't need another achiever. It needed a translator. Here's the first micro-reveal. The darkest moments weren't about building faster. They were about making the future understandable, today. Short sentence. Long impact. Ideas that are too far ahead fail quietly. Not because they're wrong, but because they arrive without bridges. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That urge to slow down, not to stop, but to clarify. To bring others with you. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon began shifting from vision holder to system architect. He wasn't just asking what's next. He was asking what must be obvious right now. Here's the surprising turn. The more complex the future became, the simpler the message had to be. Factories, vehicles, launches, each became expressions of a single idea. Make the impossible feel inevitable. Hope rises here. Because it means influence isn't about intensity. It's about intelligibility. Another micro-reveal. The empire didn't grow by convincing people. It grew by demonstrating reality, clearly and repeatedly. When proof replaces persuasion, resistance fades. This is where many of the darkest moments concentrated. Not in failure, but in refinement. removing anything that confused, simplifying without shrinking, advancing without alienating. That takes patience few talk about. Stay with this awareness. You'll understand at the end. Because once translation is mastered, a deeper question appears. A question that changes the meaning of leadership itself. If the future can be explained, if it can be built, if it can be shared, who decides the direction? That question doesn't come with an answer. It comes with responsibility. Elon felt it. When systems begin shaping daily life, ethics enter the conversation quietly, but permanently. And the darkest moments become moral calibrations. Not can we, but should we, now? And that's where the final pressure forms. Before the next part, something must be revealed. There's one truth still missing. Wait, pause right here, because this is where responsibility turns inward. You remember the question we left hanging. When the future becomes understandable, who decides its direction? This is where that weight lands. There came a moment when Elon Musk realized that influence doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. Quietly. Relentlessly. Here's the first micro-reveal. The darkest moments weren't about opposition. They were about impact. Short sentence. Long reflection. When your ideas begin shaping how people move, think, and plan, every decision carries echoes you may never hear. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That hesitation before acting. Not fear, but awareness. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon reached a point where speed had to answer to wisdom. Not to slow progress, but to prevent momentum from outrunning intention. Here's the surprising turn. Restraint became a form of leadership. Choosing when not to move mattered as much as choosing when to accelerate. Hope rises here. Because it means maturity isn't the loss of ambition. It's the sharpening of it. Another micro-reveal. The empire didn't hold its $300 billion horizon through constant expansion. It held it through deliberate focus. Fewer distractions. Cleaner priorities. Clearer lines between what mattered and what merely impressed. At this stage, the darkest moments weren't public. They were internal audits. Questions asked late at night. Trade-offs weighed quietly. Paths considered, and dismissed. Stay with this awareness. You'll understand at the end. Because this is where leadership stops being about vision alone, and becomes about consequence. Every system built becomes a precedent. Every success sets a standard. And standards shape futures. Elon began asking a deeper question. Not just what's possible, but what's sustainable. That question doesn't come with applause. It comes with patience. And patience isn't passive. It's intentional restraint aligned with long-term purpose. Here's the tension before the reveal. When you see far enough ahead, shortcuts lose their appeal. Not because they're wrong, but because they cost too much later. And that realization carries weight. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because even wisdom has a limit. And there's one truth still missing. You were meant to arrive here. Because this is where the story turns quiet, and the truth sharpens. You remember the tension we paused on. When wisdom reaches its limit. When restraint alone can't answer what comes next. This is where that final pressure appears. There was a moment when Elon Musk realized something most never confront. You can build systems. You can shape futures. But eventually, the future looks back at you. Here's the first micro-reveal. The darkest moments weren't about making the wrong choice. They were about realizing every choice now mattered. Short sentence. Deep weight. At this level, neutrality disappears. Doing nothing becomes a decision. Delay becomes direction. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. That feeling that standing still isn't rest anymore. It's avoidance. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Elon reached a point where the question was no longer external. Not markets. Not technology. Not timelines. It was internal. What kind of future am I willing to be responsible for? Here's the surprising turn. The answer didn't come as certainty. It came as commitment. Hope rises here. Because commitment doesn't require knowing every outcome. It requires choosing a direction you can stand behind. Even when it costs comfort. Another micro-reveal. The empire didn't stabilize because pressure eased. It stabilized because values clarified. When values become clear, trade-offs simplify. Noise fades. Decisions align. This is where the darkest moments became moments of honesty. With himself. With the mission. With time. Not every opportunity was taken. Not every expansion was pursued. Some doors were left closed, on purpose. That restraint didn't shrink the future. It preserved it. Stay with this realization. You'll understand at the end. Because this is the part most people never hear. Success doesn't test your ability to grow. It tests your ability to remain coherent. When influence multiplies, integrity must scale faster. Elon sensed that if the inner framework fractured, the outer structure wouldn't matter. So the work turned inward again. Simplify. Clarify. Align. And that alignment carried him through moments no one saw. Moments where the next step wasn't obvious. But the direction was. Here's the mystery still unresolved. If clarity, commitment, and responsibility are all in place, what finally turns pressure into peace? Before you move on, listen. Because this is the moment everything quietly resolves. You remember the question we left unanswered. What finally turns pressure into peace? What remains when clarity, commitment, and responsibility are all in place? This is the truth beneath it all. Elon Musk reached a realization that didn't arrive as a breakthrough. It arrived as stillness. Here's the first micro-reveal. Peace didn't come from winning. It came from acceptance. Short sentence. Deep calm. Acceptance that struggle would never fully disappear. Acceptance that doubt would revisit in new forms. Acceptance that building the future is not a phase, it's a posture. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. Why the chase feels different now. Why achievement alone doesn't satisfy the way you expected. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. The darkest moments didn't vanish when the empire reached scale. They transformed. They stopped asking, "Can I survive this?" and started asking, "Can I remain true inside this?" Here's the revelation most people never hear. The failures didn't build the $300 billion empire. They built the person capable of holding it. Hope settles here. Because it means your hardest moments aren't delays. They are preparations. Elon didn't escape pressure. He learned how to stand within it without losing direction. That's when peace appeared, not as rest, but as steadiness. Another micro-reveal. When your actions align with something larger than ego, fear loses leverage. Not instantly. Gradually. And gradually is how real futures are built. Stay with this feeling. You'll understand at the end. Because the final truth isn't about Elon Musk at all. It's about this. The darkest moments don't define you. They train you. They teach you what matters when nothing feels certain. They strip away noise until only direction remains. And when that happens, success stops being the goal. Impact does. Vision does. Truth does. That's why the story doesn't end with a number. Or a valuation. Or a headline. It ends with alignment. And if you've been listening closely, you already know what comes next. Not the next part of the video. The next part of you. But even now, there's one truth still missing.